ladies and gentlemen. I'm Anton Mano, and you're listening to Contact. Today's subject, extraterrestrials in the Bible, subtitled, Will the Real God Please Stand Up? At the beginning of the show, we heard the theme from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, composed by John Williams. Well, we humans have already had a close encounter of the third kind. The man's name is Abraham. And his story composes the Old Testament of the Bible. The extraterrestrial appeared to him in Mesopotamia, where all our history books tell us that mankind originated. In fact, some of the stories in the Old Testament came from older Mesopotamian texts. This has been proven by archaeological evidence. Mesopotamia is also the area where archaeologists found clay tablets. And after 40 years, Dr. Zachariah Sitchin was able to decipher them. The tablets told the story of an ET extraterrestrial race that landed on Earth in Mesopotamia, and through genetics and procreation made humans. You can read more on this topic in Tillinger's book, Slave Species of God. The extraterrestrials were known as the Anunnaki. We will talk more about them later. So the story in Genesis says Abraham has an encounter with this extraterrestrial. The extraterrestrial tells him to settle in a certain land and that he would help him. The rest of the Bible, specifically the first 5 books of the Old Testament, is the written history of this relationship through thousands of years with the extraterrestrial and Abraham and his descendants known as the Jewish people. I will also say that Islam is also a descendant of Abraham with a different wife. More on this in another show. So thousands of years pass, and now the Jewish people have a written history of a relationship with a God. But what is needed in this history is a story of a beginning before Abraham has his encounter. So what is used to put in the beginning of the Bible what was known as the creation story of those days, thousands of years ago, about how human came to be. The creation story was the story put in Genesis in chapter 1 to 3. These were the stories that were known thousands of years ago of how humans were created. This is what was put in the beginning of Genesis in the Bible. The story in chapter 3 was probably modified throughout the ages in the form of metaphors like the apple, the snake, and so forth. No telling how much modification was done before it was printed on paper. Most likely the original story was more in the like of what was written in clay tablets found in Mesopotamia. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, I found in my studies that they are 2 different accounts, not related. Chapter 1 tells the story of a God creating everything from an earth that was void and dark. It says, and the Spirit of God moved over the earth and everything was created. Then we have a completely different story about some gods being mad with the humans they had made. This is the story in the Adam and Eve scene in the so-called Garden of Eve. There were 2 opposing beings. One was described as God and the other a snake. In my studies of ancient Jewish texts, what it says is that the snake is an older god. It's difficult to make an understanding of what an older god means, but it does specify that it was a god. The text goes on to explain that after God has made humans, apparently by manipulating DNA, the older God made Eve an offer. It's very possible that the God in the garden, not the older God, the snake, is related to the Anunnaki ETs who landed in Mesopotamia and genetically made humans. They made a primitive species of human by manipulating the DNA in a monkey. Modern science has proven that all humans are related to one monkey in Africa. Then this primitive human was made more intelligent through procreation or other means, possibly from a different extraterrestrial, as the next story might imply. The text says that the older God told Eve if she would like to be the mother of more intelligent humans. He explained to her that if she would procreate with him, her offspring would have his DNA, making humans more advanced. So Eve agreed, and he seduced her, and probably had intercourse with her, or artificial insemination. Stories of gods procreating with humans and their offspring being more advanced are common in history. Eve gave birth to a more advanced human, more advanced than what the other gods, possibly the Anunnaki, had made. The Anunnaki seems to have wanted to leave humans in a more primitive state. Whichever way, the snake god made humans more intelligent and the goal was accomplished. The story gets worse. When the gods find out what happened with Eve, they are mad, and they curse the woman and the earth. The woman with her menstrual period and craving for her husband, and the earth is cursed by not letting it produce food freely, making man plow and toil to feed his family. A lot of people, when they hear the word curse, they think of the Hollywood program. These curses are done scientifically. It's like if I would pour acid in drinking water, I cursed it by adding another chemical. It's science. And remember, these extraterrestrials are very technologically advanced. It gets worse. By cursing the earth, man now has to work, plow the ground to eat for his survival. And this created all the problems we have on earth. It creates problems in many ways. Some people want to take what other people have plowed. Others want people to plow for them. Others want fertile land. Others are just plain hungry. All this creates problems and wars. All the problems we humans have had are because of this curse. This having to plow has metaphored into what we know as work today. All of this is very terrible, but listen to the language these extraterrestrial gods used. When they found out what happened with Eve, they say, look now, the humans have intelligence. They are like us. If we let them continue, they will also become immortal. So again, they genetically cut the lifespan of humans to 120 years and introduce death into the world. Also, by man having to toil, this will keep them busy enough to not think of how to break the death curse. So these gods in Genesis were afraid we would be like them. Why the fear? It can't be good. It's clear they do not want us to be technologically advanced. This is why we can't go to planets, why spacecraft blow up or disappear, why NASA's billions never got us anywhere but to our satellite, the moon. This is why we can't get off fossil fuel or cure diseases. Because these same powers that cursed us, that have been around since the beginning, are making sure we don't succeed using many methods, including spilling much human blood, to make sure we don't advance. It's like something out of a horror film. Now, let's turn to the snake god. This god wanted humans to advance. This older god is believed to be the devil to many Christians throughout history. We have to ask ourselves, this being wanted to advance humans. Is this bad? Has he been labeled bad to make the other beings look good? After you hear what happened next with these other beings, one would think they are the bad ones. So what has happened with these two gods? Are these two gods striving against each other so that the technological advances we humans have made are always trying to be violated by this other god? Is this one of the reasons we are currently at war in an area where this story took place? We should ask, the being that appeared to Abraham, was this the older God that wants humans to advance? And is this why he told Abraham to leave Mesopotamia? Did God use the name firstborn because Abraham was a descendant of God himself and Eve in the beginning? So I have to say, will the real God please stand up? I believe with this intelligence we acquired in the garden, we can find the solution to the curse. But we must first understand the powers we are up against. These beings are highly technologically advanced, and even if we would come together all as one, if we don't have the technology to resist them, they will make sure we don't advance. Resistance would probably be futile. Maybe with the help of the other older God, we can accomplish this. We have to say, will the real God please stand up? There's a lot of information packed in this 15-minute show. I suggest that you folks listen to it maybe a couple or a few times and study it, as there is a lot of information. Thank you for listening. I'm Anton Lano, and have